Muscatine Community School District Board of Education meeting. Due to COVID, the board is still socially distancing. We are meeting remotely using technology this evening. We also have, Jeremy is working some magic for us. Jeremy is sending all of our broadcasting, our information out to channel 2, just like if we were at City Hall. So Jeremy, we thank you for doing that. Madam Secretary, would you take roll for us, please?
Sure. Director Cooney?
Here.
DeBeat?
Here.
Draba?
Here.
Finn?
Here.
McCarter?
Here.
Morgan?
Here.
Sure. Denny?
Here. Sorry, I forgot to unmute.
That's okay. A quorum is present.
Thank you very much. Tonight, we'll start our meeting off with the Pledge of Allegiance. In the last several months, as we have been meeting virtually, we have asked visitors or guests to record themselves saying the pledge. We've had several student groups that have done this in the past, and tonight, we are fortunate enough that we have a group of adults. So the Muscatine Fire Department, the Green Shift, will be saying the pledge for us tonight. And we would like to thank the men and women of the fire department who keep us all safe. They certainly have been on the front lines during these last several months, and we certainly appreciate them. So here's the Green Shift.
Green Shift, Muscatine Fire Department.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you again to the Muscatine Fire Department. We appreciate you leading us in the pledge tonight. Next up, we have our board targets and goals, and I'm going to read through what our 3 goals are. We keep them on our agenda for every meeting, so it's always in front of board members. And those goals are: students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably. Students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. And if we've ever had our work cut out for us, this has been the year to do that. So that takes us to an update on our Muskie Return to Learn plan. And Clint, I'm going to start passing it to you, and you may pass the baton from there if you like.
All right, very good. So I just got some general comments that I'd like to make and kind of take you through where we're at right now and what are some next steps as we get to the end here. I'll have some of our committee chairs just do a brief share out on some of the work that's happened between the last time we met and this meeting. So first of all, I appreciate all the work that's been happening on this Return to Learn plan, from our administrators to our teachers involved, instructional coaches. It really has been all hands on deck through a very challenging summer. So, but I know right now as we get closer to the start of school, and although August 24th still seems far away, it's going to come up on us really quick. And that question is out there. What are we going to do? And I know you're hearing it from the community, you're hearing it in the media more and more on the news about different options. And again, just to remind you from our last meeting, we're going to have 3 options. It's going to be the full return of students into the building, a hybrid model, which could look like certain kids coming on certain days, kind of a rotation of that, and then a distance learning model. So I want to be really clear that our intent is to bring kids back, that we know that the best in learning environment for kids is in our school buildings with our staff, and that is the best option for a majority of our kids. We have to be prepared to move between any of those 3 scenarios, and that's going to be very fluid. But again, the focus is got to be getting our kids and our staff back in the building. So I know you and the community, there's a lot of questions, and we're not going to have final answers on that tonight. And that's the work that continues with our subcommittees. They're looking at our programming, our standards. They're looking at interventions, core instruction. They're looking at our practices. So our principals have begun meeting to talk about what social distancing would look like in our classrooms, given sizes and tables and hallways and lunch and recess. and including the professional development that is needed for our staff as well. So right now, one of the things we talked about at our last meeting was very intently looking at the goal statements in each one of those subcategories or sub areas that we shared with you the last time, and really thinking about for that specific each area, what work needs to be accomplished over the next 30 days. So we know that new teachers will be reporting on August 13th and 14th. So whatever we put in place in terms of training, whatever, we've got to be ready to go August 13th and 14th. And then we start, back mapping from that point. What are the things that need to occur to ensure that the work we have laid out will get us there? And so they're doing that work right now. We know that we've got to make a final decision on what we believe it's going to look like when school starts, and that needs to happen by the end of this month or very early in August, because we need to prepare our parents, we need to prepare our staff for that, and we'll continue to work towards that. That's going to include, are they in the building, what our safety protocols look like. That's going to include masks, shields, all of that. And we're going to begin communicating those, at least the options of the full return, the hybrid distance learning, to our parents tomorrow. As a part of that communication, we're also going to provide an opportunity for parents to indicate if they believe they want to enroll in an online model. And so we already have parents who don't feel, because of risk factors for themselves, for their other family members, or for the children themselves, that sending kids back into a school environment isn't the best. So as opposed to enrolling in a state online option, we want to have our own online model for them. So even as we bring students back into the building, we need to have that online option as well. And keep in mind, we are going to have staff that have high risk conditions. And how can we leverage the staff who have high risk conditions and may need to do some online instruction with those teachers or those students who need that support? So that will be part of that communication going out tomorrow. So again, we'll continue to work through that, but I want to let you know that we're going to make this work. It's going to happen, and it's going to be good for our kids. We also may need to have a special session for the board here at the end of this month or in early August to review those final recommendations with you and share all that with you and have that discussion. Typically during the school year, you would have 2 meetings, and that second meeting would be the committee meeting or the work session. And we don't have those through the summer, but as you know, we held one in June for just this return to learn purpose. And we would do that again, so we can communicate kind of where we're at. Again, we'll continue to monitor what's happening with public health, what's happening in our community here locally, across the state, and really across the nation. And should we need to change plans, we will. Our primary focus will absolutely be on the health and safety of our students and our staff. So just a couple other reminders that are, and I know, so you know this, our schools are built for students and for that learning environment. But within every building, there are people of all ages. So as we think about our buildings, we can't just think about a building that's full of young children or younger adults. They are full of people of all ages. Our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our custodians, our office staff, they're of all ages and of risk factors. And we have to have the plans and procedures in place to keep our students and the adults healthy and safe within our buildings, or we're going to be forced into a distance learning model that we may not want to be in. And so again, that's the importance of these plans and being prepared and putting the procedures in place. And we will continue to update you every time we meet on where we're at with that and kind of what's next. A couple of the other pieces that I wanted to mention, and some of this is based on our conversation from the last meeting as we talked about that beginning of the year time, as we're bringing kids back and we're spending a lot of time assessing, figuring out where they're at, starting that, so there is going to be a period of time where we're just getting to understand where kids are at coming back and what they need to move forward. And although that's going to take some time, that's okay because it's kind of that go slow to go fast model. But the other piece that we have to remember is our staff and our students have been out of the buildings for a significant amount of time. And going back to kind of psychology 101 and Maslow's needs hierarchy, we need to make sure people feel safe and secure, right? And so as we're doing those assessments, as we're identifying where kids are at, we're also helping them adjust that social emotional need and feel safe and secure within that new environment. And that's going to take some time, but that's important time as well. And again, there's new things to teach our students about how we do business differently this year than any other time before. But again, very important to keep everyone safe and healthy. I also wanted to mention, I know part of a focus of this board is that curriculum audit and how we're moving that work forward. And I want to make sure it's clear to you and clear to the community that we're not necessarily putting that work aside to do the return to learn. So when you really dig into some of that return to learn work, it does align very well with some of those recommendations in the curriculum audit. So although we're focusing on that return to learn work, there are a number of components that align to that and will move the needle for us on that work as well. So it's not, we're going to put pause on one and do this, and then we'll come back to that later. They are, it's combined work, and it's going to help us in all areas and will be good for that curriculum audit. So with that, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to let our committee chairs just kind of quickly update you on each of their areas, and then we'll take some questions. So let's start with teaching and learning.
Sure. So I will jump in and just let you know where we're at with our problem statements. I'm not going to go through and read each one, but to kind of echo what Mr. Christopher said, the AEA has recently released quite a few professional development modules that not only are helpful to our return to learn team, but will be extremely beneficial for the work that we'll do with teachers in professional development, not necessarily only at the beginning of the year, but throughout the year with the professional development calendar that Joelle has been working on. So those we're excited. Additionally, they have released this upcoming week some modules as far as distance learning goes that can be coupled with the Google Certified Educator training that our teachers have participated in fourth quarter. So that will help us with the modification of curriculum. And then some assessment dates have been released. Guidance was given on last Thursday regarding benchmark assessments. So that helps give us a little bit more insight into what that will look like. Again, we know that we want to welcome students in. We want to meet their basic needs. And then we'll really get the opportunity to kind of see where we need to go from there. So is there anything, Stacy or Joelle, that I've forgotten that you would like to add?
I don't think so.
The only thing I would just add is I know that one of the concerns, with teachers and was when are we going to do this work with teachers? And so just basically what Stephanie had alluded to, we do have days before school starts that we will be working with teachers to help get them ready. And then also, as Stephanie stated, we will be using throughout the school year a lot of supports in place and resources for all departments and grade levels so that they do have the support resources and materials that they need throughout the year for whichever model we end up with. So
I did also want to mention too that our Return to Learn team has engaged in a partnership with Muscatine Power and Water. We're looking at not only do we need to provide devices for families, but we also need to be able to support with internet access. So as soon as we're able to meet with MPW, we'll continue that partnership that we've already established, and just to kind of see how we can continue to support and then add on additional Wi-Fi access for our families, whether it be outside of outside of the bypass, or whether it be how we want to handle that. But they have been extremely flexible with us, and then our community partners have been excited to partner with us in that area too. So that's looking like that will be something we'll be able to offer. In regards to the special populations group, the Iowa Department of Ed will begin weekly webinars on specifically topics within special education. And these weekly webinars, the first one is tomorrow, Tuesday, July 14th, and it is from 1 to 2. So we are looking very forward to those weekly 1 to 2 meetings for further guidance just in the areas of special education. Also, the Department of Ed, they will be holding their regular weekly scheduled Zoom sessions, and those will begin on Thursday, July 16th from 1 to 2. Again, if you can listen to those, any new guidance or new updates are revealed at that time. Those meetings are also recorded, and any new updates and all the current guidance can be found on the COVID-19 guidance and information page, which is on the Department of Ed website.
Thank you, Becky. And then just from operations, we've talked about a lot of these pieces already. Stephanie mentioned the AEA online resources and some of the work we're doing with our community partners on internet access and devices. So that work will continue. I will also say there's a lot of great support out there, both from our county health officials. Several of us had the opportunity to participate in a webinar with the University of Iowa and some of their specialists on infectious diseases and epidemiologists to really talk about what they're seeing and how we can, again, provide a safe and healthy environment for our students and for our staff. Tammy and I were fortunate to sit on a West Liberty Rotary meeting last week with some school officials and the Rotary, again, to talk about how we're going to bring students back and how we can do that safely and get an update on what our county health officials are seeing here in our community across the state of Iowa. So the work continues. We're leveraging some great partners here locally in the community and our partners across the state as well as neighboring districts. And we can leverage all of that to make sure we're providing the best plans possible for our students and for our staff. And with that, I'll open it up to questions, again, knowing that we don't have final answers for you tonight, but the work continues.
Clint, I have two questions. So first one is,
okay,
what is going to determine which plan we move forward with? Is it numbers within our county? Is it a recommendation from some public health official, whether it's in Muscatine or at the state? What will determine the choice of our plan?
Right. So again, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, our intent is to bring kids back, right? So the focus is we're going to be in person at school with staff and students, again, knowing that we're going to have an option for online for students and families who feel they need that. And then based on communication with, department and health officials from locally and from the state, if numbers really began to change significantly and they gave us the recommendation that we were going into distance learning, we would do that. But again, the intent would be to move forward with an in-person. I think from a hybrid standpoint, the only thing that, and again, that would be based on recommendations from the state or on the county. And I'll give you an example of that with transportation, right? If we're required to social distance on a bus and we can only put 13 students on a bus, that's not going to be a really viable option for us. But if we were required to do that, we'd probably have to do some hybrid version where we were sending a group of students one day and a different group of students on a different day in order to get all students at some point to school. So I think those would be the conditions we'd look at in making those decisions, again, in consultation with local and state officials.
Okay, so our primary choices go back at 100%. Basically, I hear you saying, if it is a hybrid model, who needs to make that decision, and is there a deadline for them to make that decision, whether it's the 13 students on a bus versus a larger capacity or whatever? What is the timing of that?
Well, some of those determinations from the state, I can't speak to their deadlines. Sometimes they make those decisions and we just respond to them. That's why again, I think we plan on bringing a full return with having that online option, and then we'll make adjustments accordingly. But I think, again, the sooner we can make our decision of what that's going to look like for us, communicate that out, and then we'll make changes as necessary.
Okay. Thanks.
And you had a second question? I don't know if I answered the second question.
Yeah, it was about the hybrid model. I was wondering what a typical day would look like for a teacher, and would there be less instruction for the students in a hybrid model? But if we're not leaning that way, then I don't know if it's as, but I was wondering about that.
Okay.
Clint, I have a question. I know that the intention is to bring back, let's assume 100% of our students as face-to-face, but at the same time, we're saying that we might have some exceptions in which for some, they might go into the online option. Do we have a set of steps or requirements that those people or the parents and everybody in the community that they will know that they need to follow in order to select that option?
So that's a good question, John. That's part of our, I think initially what we need to know is who's planning on sending kids and who's planning on putting them in an online option. I think as part of your question is what are the requirements we're going to put in place in order to determine if they can do that online option. And the reality is for some of our parents, they don't necessarily need a no from a doctor to say they're a high risk in order to sign up for another state online option, right? So, as we look at our program, if a family feels like it's not safe for them to return, we should try to provide that option to keep Muscatine families in Muscatine. And so that would be the intent of it. But the most important thing is that we know that they're going to do that. So we can look at those numbers by grade level or by high school areas so we can start to think about how we staff that. So are we talking about, 25 kids, or are we talking about 150 kids? Because that will, certainly impact how we staff that model. So again, the first step is just identifying what kinds of numbers are we talking about and what does that look like from an elementary standpoint, a junior high standpoint, and a high school standpoint.
Thank you.
Clint, I have a question. It kind of goes along a little bit with what John is talking about, but it has more to do with the communication of that, because we all know that we have plenty of parents that have not been pleased per se at how the enrichment went this spring. And I'm just not sure if they really understand the difference of what we'll be able to give the kids this fall. And so as you take and ask those parents, what is their intention? Because I see a lot of them are saying that, well, I'm just going to homeschool my kids. They're thinking that they're going to go to that homeschool model rather than like an online or distant learning type of model. So we need to probably make sure that they understand the professionalism of the model that we are looking at.
Yep. And again, I think that goes to our communication plan, and that there's a communication component that's built into that plan. And again, we need to start getting that information out there and sharing that. I know that Lisa is answering a lot of questions as parents call in about what that program, is going to be able to do for students. We also have to be able to provide some of the information on what that even means to be a homeschool parent. There are some still requirements for that, and they need to understand those as well. But where we can, we need to make sure that we're informing parents that if they choose that online model, it's our staff, it's our curriculum, our resources for their students. That's what they're getting. And that's a benefit to them as opposed to, again, going into a state online option where they may have no connection to whoever is teaching that curriculum.
Clint, my question is in regards to the physical classroom are we looking at reduced numbers in the classroom so we can social distance, or how are we setting up the desks so they're facing one direction so the kids aren't in groups or things like that? That's my question.
Yep, and those are pieces that as I mentioned before, principals are starting to work through now and thinking about how do you arrange a room, right? And they were talking about that today because, we've done a great job in this district of at the elementary level and at other levels, moving away from individual desks where you have the 5 rows of 5 students and nice even rows, and moving to more collaborative spaces with tables and you really want kids interacting and moving around that classroom. Now, because of this, we're actually looking at how do we do that differently again. But again, I think part of that is just having that conversation, seeing what they can actually fit in those classrooms, what that'll look like. And then we'll share that information as we move forward. But they are looking at that physical space within the building very intently.
Okay. The other question I have is, are we going to just look at the recommendations from the public health as far as the wearing masks?
You say that again?
Are we going to look at the recommendations for the public health professionals on wearing masks for students and teachers?
Yep, that'll all be a part of the conversation and the final recommendation.
All right.
Clint,
Go ahead, Mike.
all right. My question would be, if we're talking with our community partners, maybe I'm just a black cloud and kind of a pessimist at heart, but if the worst case scenario, we have to go online, I know that economically that's going to be a hardship on our large employers, whether it's Bear, Hahn, All Steel, Kent Corp. Has there been any talk or any discussion with them about maybe working together to try to instead of maybe having 8-hour or 3 8-hour shifts, having 6 4-hour shifts, and so we can coordinate our timing? Or has there been any talk about those at all, or will there be any talk about that?
We haven't had those conversations yet, Mike. But again, as I've had a number of meetings with community partners this past week, and that will continue. Hopefully we can continue to identify ways that benefit them and benefit our students and our staff as well.
Clint, this question that I have, I think Joelle might be able to help me out with this. We had a meeting conversation with a good amount of folks about a week ago, I think it was, about childcare and what are some of those needs going to take and be. And Joelle, would you maybe be able to explain a little bit more on there?
Sure. So we have been meeting with just different community members that offer childcare services for our parents. And we do have Kim Warren is helping to kind of also lead a community meeting where we will bring in, different providers that include both from our community, the workforce, our school. And the goal of this group and this meeting is to make sure that parents do have choices and opportunities if they are working, and we would have to go into a different model where their kids wouldn't be at school all day. So we want to make sure that as a community group, we are looking at what is available for parents. We're also looking at cost for parents and what kinds of grants are available out there for both providers and parents. So that, because we do know that, paying for daycare is a hardship. So we are looking at that as well, so that when we do come out with communication as we move forward, we will be able to provide parents with some choices and different options for them if they would need that. I don't know, Karen, would you add anything else to that, or?
No, I would not. It's a wonderful group of stakeholders that are looking at it from that angle of it. And I think that we will end up being pleased at what kind of help that we see how we have in our community. So look forward to that.
Bobby, did you have a question?
No, go ahead, Tammy.
No, I'm good. I wanted to make sure that everybody got their questions asked.
Well, and this is probably not the right time or place, but I'm curious if this is the place to ask, are any of you, as hard as you've been working, are nervous? Because it feels like we have a lot of plans and we're juggling a lot of balls. Is it possible, Clint or anybody, that we, for the benefit of our students, for the benefit of our parents, that we make a decision and then fit it in within whatever the state then gives us from that kind of guidance, what they're doing? That's the first thing, just so we have something to hold on to. And the second thing is talking about what Denny said about masks. That's going to be, I can't wait to have that conversation in a public forum. But have we ever even considered logistically, if the answer is yes, and the state says, let's say the governor says mask, logistically, the number of masks for students for the entire year, and can we even get them? Because I would hate for us to say, yes, let's make a mandate of masks before we even figured out that we have them on hand.
So I'll try to address both those questions. I think in terms of the timeline, you're right. We need to, and I also think about, some comments that Mike, you made the last time as well, that no matter what decision we make, there's going to be a group of people that are unhappy with that. We just have to make the decision and be transparent about it, and why we're moving in that direction. I will say we are not waiting. I'm not advocating that we wait on a decision to see what the state will do. We just need still more time to work through the details on that finalized plan for us. And I am comfortable saying that by the end of this month, we have to have that plan ready to go in communication, kind of that final version of it. And again, we'll adjust to what the state, I really don't anticipate the state, given what they've done so far, coming in and giving really hard guidelines on you have to do this and don't do this. That's not how they've at least done that so far. So I do think it's more a question of making sure we're in a good place to make all of those recommendations. And even just as you think about the discussions that we've had over the last couple of meetings, how far into the details we get about what it looks like in a classroom and how we serve lunch and what happens there's a whole lot of stuff we've got to work through in order to have all those decisions finalized, and that takes time. So that's where the focus of our time is, not necessarily on hoping the state makes the decision for us, if that helps answer your question. And then in terms of masks, we have not necessarily calculated, we need X number, but I can tell you with when you have nearly 5,000 students, you have to be prepared to offer those masks for students who can't bring them or forget them. And they may need one on day 1 and day 2 and day 3. So we will need a significant supply. It's not necessarily just a simple, we'll get everyone a mask and they'll have that mask all year and they'll always remember it and they'll always have it on. It won't be that. And obviously we also have to think about the logistics of doing that in terms of how do we manage that and how do we, make sure that people are wearing them appropriately. Again, same thing for our staff. If we're going to require staff to wear them, we need to be prepared to provide those, right? And what that looks like. So.
One more quick just comment question. Is it possible with this return to learn and the decision that we end up making, and I don't know how to ask this question, can it be in pieces? Because I'm thinking I heard, and that Illinois is a different beast, I get it, but there's a district there's a lawsuit involved. And so like everything's on hold, right? Because they said, this is what we're doing. Now that there's a lawsuit, I mean, how does that work? I mean, for us, because I would suspect either way, I think it's a lose-lose. And I think that something will come out of it either way. How are we prepared for that, if we can be?
Well, I think, at a minimum, we can say we strongly recommend staff and students wear them, right? That gives them the ability to wear them if they want, but we're not mandating. So even if there was something that was held up in the court system, it wouldn't prevent staff from wearing them should they choose to, and it wouldn't prevent students to wear them. It is, as you say, somewhat in pieces where because we can't social distance on a bus the way we can't put up dividers, we can't afford to run 4 times the number of buses, right? That we require it on the bus. Because we can't meet any of those social distancing guidelines, but we have to transport kids. Then, and again, and in that case, we have to make sure our buses are ready to hand out masks for the kids who don't have them that day. So we will have to look at all aspects of that.
So Clint, have we been talking about procuring masks with people up to this point in time? Have we been looking at the space and the furniture? You mentioned before that we need to do that this month, but I know everyone's been working really hard. So for me, it sounds like we have to do it this month versus we've got a good chunk of it done in the last 2 to 3 months. Like, where are we at in terms of like percentage completion of these items and to-dos?
Well, I'd say we're a lot further along in looking at the physical space than we are at procuring masks. That conversation, as you know, has continued to move around, and a lot of different, obviously there's divide everywhere on that conversation. And so, although I know there are options to procure those, just like we did for graduation, right? We had our students there, we provided those masks, we came in, but again, we're going to need a significant number of those. So would we need them all at once? No. So I think we can get enough to get us going, and we can continue to provide those as we move forward. So I don't have a specific percentage of, we're 75%, ready for physical space. But again, just the complexity, I think going back to Toby's comment, are you nervous? Sure, we're all nervous. Because there's a lot at stake here, and we want to do what's best for our staff, and we want to do what's best for kids. And again, knowing that we're not going to have any perfect solution, and we're going to have to adjust to that. And there's going to be some things that, as we get into it, probably isn't working the way we expected it to, and we're going to have to make adjustments. And we just have to be prepared to do that.
Are there any other questions on the Return to Learn update? I would like to just thank the team one more time for the work that you've done. I know when I start to read articles or I'm reading something, I lose sleep, and I'm not living, eating it, and breathing it like all of you are. So I agree, whatever decision we make at some point in time, we all need to remind ourselves that we won't get it perfect, but the ability to adjust quickly, I think, will be important. And there's no doubt that you're doing this with the best interests of our students and our families as we all make through this journey of what will school look like. So the new normal, our students will be, there will be a lot of adjustments on what school will look like for them next year, as well as our staff. So we appreciate that. We appreciate that work. All right, that takes us on to the next portion of our agenda then, which are our action items or possible action items. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless the director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, special education contracts, early childhood Iowa Muscatine contract, resource navigator contract, student teaching agreement, and statewide voluntary preschool contracts. What are the wishes of the board?
I move to accept the consent agenda.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as proposed. Is there any discussion?
Do we need to pull out that one employment recommendation for resignation?
So Danny, you want to talk just a little bit more about that specifically?
Well, we have a resignation from Kayla Ort, a first grade teacher at Jefferson. It's a late resignation. And I think we probably should pull that out and I guess make a motion to accept that on as we have in the past with the condition that we can hire a replacement.
Okay, so John, you made the motion to accept, is that correct?
And yes, and I can change that with the friendly amendments by Denny. So.
Okay, so pull out the one resignation that was missed the deadline.
Yes.
The resignation time. Okay, and I'm sorry, I was so busy waiting to get to that employment recommendation. I missed who seconded the motion.
It was me. I still second it.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for still seconding. All right. So the John has amended his motion to pull out the one resignation that was received after the contract deadline and put everything else as everything else in the consent agenda. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Hey, Tammy, I thought we were doing roll calls now that we're virtual.
We were, thank you. I just, as soon as I said it, yes, I apologize. Since we are doing this virtually, speaking of change is hard, and some of us, it takes longer to adapt than others. It was suggested that we do these as roll call votes. So, Madam Secretary, you're on.
Great. Director Cooney,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Straba,
Aye.
Finn,
Aye.
McCarter, Toby,
Sorry, aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
sure.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Thank you. The nice thing is about having friendly peers, they call you out appropriately as need be and let you move on. So thank you for that.
Well,
All
we have
right.
to support our new superintendent. It was his recommendation, so
It was a great recommendation and I blew it.
we don't want to step out of line the first meeting.
Great, now he's already calling me out, Clint. Pretty soon I'm gonna have a detention before it's all over. So we have a resignation then now that we still need to deal with. What are the wishes of the board?
I move that we accept the resignation on the condition that we can hire a suitable replacement.
And Denny, that would be the recommendation of administration as well.
And then also, I guess I should add that give the administration the power to release that person at that time.
Is
I'll
there a
second that
second?
motion. I'll second.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to take the resignation of Kayla and Ort, and I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly, who's a first grade teacher at Jefferson. And if, as long as we can find a suitable replacement, we will ask that the administration provide the guidance on releasing her out of her contract. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, Madam Secretary, it's all you again.
Director Cooney,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Straba,
Aye.
Finn,
Aye.
McCarter,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
sure.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Thank you. All right, as you look at your agenda, one thing to note, in the consent agenda, we listed that we were including the statewide voluntary preschool contracts, which is beautiful. Just note that that falls under letter J, and we just missed getting it the asterisk as being part of those action items, but you all did just approve that all the way through letter J. So the next thing then that we have on our agenda is letter K, and it's to approve policy 900.15, community use of school district facilities and equipment with administrative regulations R1, R2, R3, And Exhibit 1 is a new piece. Do I understand that correctly? Clint, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Actually, the whole series of policy for 900.15 is all new.
Okay, not just Exhibit 1.
We missed item J, approved policy not 401.8 payroll period.
Oh, because I said I was what we missed and I skipped right to J. So sorry. If I'm getting graded tonight, I'm quickly sliding down to the wrong end of the scale. All right. So I jumped right to K. So let's finish that and we'll go back to J. So what are the wishes?
Well, I'm sorry. As I participated in working on this particular policy, I would like to have the honor to move to approve policy 900.115, community use of school district facilities and equipments with administrative regulations R1, R2, R3, and Exhibit 1.
I'd like to second that. They worked hard on that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 900.15, community use of school district facilities and equipment. The administrative regulations R1, R2, R3, and Exhibit 1. And these have been on the agenda a couple of times, by the way. So we run these through, and it's not until the third time that a policy review or a new policy is put into action. Is there any discussion?
I would like to say many thanks to Tom for chairing that group and keeping us on task and bringing, all this discussion together and finishing everything, as a matter of fact, in only 2 sessions or 2 meetings. So thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. And I know Jill and had a lot to do with it too. Jill Reynolds and Wendy, they helped a lot. So thank you.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary?
Dr. Cooney,
Aye.
DeVito,
Aye.
Bravo,
Aye.
Finn,
Aye.
McCarter,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, so to keep it interesting, let's jump back up to letter J, which is to approve policy 401.8 periods. And again, the board has seen this a couple of other times on the agenda as well. What are the wishes of the board on this item?
I'll make the motion to approve policy 401.8 payroll for the payroll period.
Is there a second?
I'll be a second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve 401.8. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary?
Dr. Cooney,
Aye.
DeVito,
Aye.
Bravo,
Aye.
Finn,
Aye.
McCarter,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries.
Great. Following along now in correct sequence of the agenda takes us to item L, which is to approve policy 203.9. This is for conflicts of interest of board members. After I just said we tend to go through these 3 times before we approve them, you've not seen this one before. However, you'll notice on your agenda that it's a change in law. So we don't really have a choice, is what that really means, but we do need to update our policy. And the change is it takes the board members who receive compensation from the school district. It takes the dollar amount of goods and services from $2,500 to $6,000. What are the wishes of the board on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve policy 203.9. This is conflict of interest for board members. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary?
Dr. Cooney,
Aye.
DeVito,
Aye.
Bravo,
Aye.
Finn,
Aye.
McCarter,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried.
Thank you. That takes us to our discussion and information portion of our agenda, which takes us to our May financials. Tom, it's all you.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. The first page of the May financials is our deposit balances. May's reconciled, and we're still within our depository resolution balance. So page 2 is our revenues and expense summaries. I have no comment on these. Our fund balances, you can see current year compared to last May of 2019. Page 3 is our expense to published budget comparison. As you know, in the far left-hand side, we have to we have 4 functional categories: instruction, support services, non-instructional, and that facilities acquisition and the AEA flow through are number 4. And on the far, the second column from the right, you'll see the published budget from April of 2019. And then the very column to the left of that is total used. So you will see that in the facilities acquisition and construction and AEA flow through, we are over our budget compared to what we published. But again, I think I mentioned last month that that's just going to be a comment on our audit report because that is a state compliance. We had to amend our budget before we went over in that functional category. So going forward, this document will help us along the way going to the next fiscal year in case we have to amend our budget again. But other than that comment, I don't have any other anything else to point out on page 3. Page 4 and 5 then are general fund revenue summaries and expenditure summary. And on the revenue summary, I'll just point out, we are obviously a month from the end of our fiscal year. We are at 91% of our budgeted revenues received. I would point out that, on the property tax, we're not right where we have been in the past, but because of the delay in property tax payments, we may not see that until July here or even in August. So then if you look all the way down into the federal sources, so you will see a federal source called CARES Act, ESSR, and that's the $717,845 that we received in May. These reports are on a cash basis. We won't recognize all this revenue by the end of the year because we won't have spent nearly all of that at all by June 30th. So, but I'm just pointing that out that we did receive that CARES Act money in May. And then the final page 4, I don't have any comments other than, we're at 70, almost 80% of our budget, which is, we should be anyway with 1 month left. So the fun is starting to happen in finance, believe me. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Tom? Who puts the fun in finance? I'm going to use that. All right. No questions for Tom. He's off the hook then. Well, that takes us to just a couple of announcements. July 14th, so tomorrow, the Riverbend Mobile Food Pantry will be at the MCSD Administration Center, so 2900 Mulberry. Starting at 4:30 p.m., a grab and go model will be utilized. This is what we've done the last several months. So if you are someone that's in need of food for the food pantry, you're able to stop by. Just a side note, no one will be allowed to enter the building. In the past, we've done that a little bit differently, but again, using that grab and go model, it's a little bit like a drive-through. So, and then our next scheduled board meeting is August 10th. Our agenda says we'll be meeting at 7 o'clock, and we're still going to determine whether we are in person or virtual. As you know, it was Clint is your first official meeting now as we tail almost to the end, by the way, that you've made it through. There really wasn't any time to talk about what we might need to do to prepare to meet together this month. But I think that there might be some conversation about that next month and how we best prepare for that. Is that fair?
Yep, absolutely. There's just some logistics we need to work through to make sure in person we can still be socially distant. We also want to provide an option, to do a remote or a virtual for those who feel maybe they need to. So our intent will be to have that in person, and we're working through the details on that, whether that will continue to be at the city hall or whether that would be at the district office. Again, just depending on logistics that we continue to work through. But we will have an in-person option in August for sure.
Great.
I got a question, Tammy, on there. Because we indicated, Clint, that we would like to, if possible, have figured out by the end of the month what is the option that we wish to be able to take and use. But yet our next meeting isn't until into August. So how do we look to present that for folks?
Yeah, so that's our next regularly scheduled meeting. As I mentioned previously, we may have to do a special session very similar to what we did in June, right? And we'll notify the public as we're required to do in the amount of time that we need to, and make sure that we can bring people together to do that. So we'll continue to work through that, and we'll keep you posted on that. But I would anticipate having an additional meeting between now and that August 10th date.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other announcements for the good of the cause? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
I saw lots of seconds. Y'all can rock, paper, scissors over that one. I'm going to assume there's no discussion over the adjournment. So, Madam Secretary, would you like to do the roll call vote again?
Got Director Cooney,
Aye.
DeBeat,
Aye.
Straba,
Aye.
Finn,
Aye.
Carter,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. All ayes and maybe a tentative maybe. Toby, is that how that works? So, all right, that takes us, that adjourns us for the evening. Everyone, thank you so much for your time tonight. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I hope to see you all in person soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.